Hi friends, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be setting up my 2024 health and wellness tracker using my Love It Panda Hobonichi Weeks. I am so excited to get into this. I fell in love with this Hobonichi Weeks cover during the previews that happened in August of this year, and I'm so relieved that after a few months of getting it, it still puts a smile on my face to see this cute little panda holding a tire. I think it's going to be perfect for a health and wellness tracker because it brings me joy every time I see it, and I just cannot wait to use it. This video is going to be a little bit of a longer one because I'm going to take you through my thought process and do some planning in real time. I think it's going to be fun, and I invite you to grab a tea or a coffee, and I'm really excited to get started. So I'll put some timestamps into the description if you want to skip around. My loose plan is I'm going to give you a background, introduction. I'm going to do a little bit of reflection and set some intentions for this book. I'm going to do a planning synthesis kind of session, borrowing some processes that I used to use in my day job, share how I'm planning on organizing it, and then I'll do a bit of a setup and then we'll wrap things up. So I'm not really going to be too focused on decorating the Hobonichi Weeks. I really want this to be more of a functional setup. So in terms of supplies, I'm going to keep it pretty minimal. I have my cousin here. I use this to take some notes and do a little bit of pre-planning before this video. I'm going to be using my trusty Pilot vanishing point, using some of these sticky notes. These were a gift from a friend. And that's pretty much it. All right, let's get started. In case you are new to the Hobonichi Weeks, it's a pretty small book, which is what I'm really excited about because I like the idea of being able to use this book for just one aspect of my life. And in this case, it's going to be my overall physical and mental health, so health and wellness. As a comparison point, this is my traveler's notebook. It is a little bit smaller. So when you open it up, it starts off with a yearly overview for the current year, the previous year, and the upcoming year. And there's a little section here for important dates. I might be getting some of the terminology wrong, but I think I've heard people refer to this as like a calendex or a yearly index. So not a lot of space, but it does have the entire year of 2024, and then the weekends are highlighted in gray and red or pink. The first monthly view is December, and technically it starts on November 27th on a Monday. So you've got the December. The monthlies go all the way to March of 2025, and you've got your calendar days and a little bit of space on the left hand side and then extra space on the bottom of the calendars, and there are little check boxes here. I'm not sure if you can see them, in case you wanted to add some lists or notes down here. Following the monthly, we get into the weekly layout. In the weekly layout, it starts on Monday, so on the left-hand side, there's a dated horizontal layout, and there are some additional dots here in case you wanted to section these off. So I've seen some people use these dots here, and they can create up to three different sections. On the right-hand side, you have extra space for taking notes. And then at the bottom, this is the English version, there is a weekly quote. And then you've also got a little calendar preview for the current month. So we can see that this is the final week of November. and it's just circled in there. That's November to December 3rd. So then that goes all the way until December 5th. No, this goes all the way to January 5th, 2025. And then you get into a note section. So there's a page here that has some useful abbreviations in case you wanted to use that. Then there's a notes cover page where you can write down page numbers and subjects. And then you have '73 pages of blank gridded notes. And then at the back, you have a couple of additional pages. So there's useful things around you to measure. You can use parts of your body or common items around you to estimate measurements when out and about. So thumb to pointer finger, I guess I can measure that out and I can see that it is roughly, if I really stretch 15 centimeters, I could put that in there. So that's kind of cool. Also size of common items. You have a favorites page where you have up to 14 things that you can add as a favorites. There's a My 100 list where you can jot down up to 100 things in the year. So this one says make a list of up to 100 entries for anything you want. Things to accomplish this year, books you've read, movies you've seen, snacks you've tried, shops you want to visit. It's up to you. I love this. I admit that I tend to get intimidated by overthinking, wanting to make this like the perfect My 100 list. In my meal planner, I use this for recipes that I wanted to refer back to. I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for in my health and wellness tracker yet, but we will see. Then there's an interview with myself. I love this kind of self-reflection thing. I will probably fill this out at some point, and I think this will be fun to do at the beginning of 2024, and it'll be fun to reflect on at the end of the year. And if I continue to have health and wellness trackers in subsequent years, I think it'll be really cool to see how this changes if I continue to do an interview with myself. And then we have a couple of recipes. Oh, I see that it is broken out by season. So there's a spring seasonal sweet, there's a summer, an autumn, and a winter. So we are heading into winter, which means I might try this gâteau au chocolat. Please don't make fun of my French accent. I might try this, and if I do, I will report back. Then we have a 365 days checkoff sheet. So again, I'm not sure what I will be tracking, but the option is here to track something for 365 days. And then there are some addresses in the back. And finally, an information page. So that is the overall Hobonichi Weeks. Now that we've gone through the overall structure of the weeks, let's get into an intention setting. When it comes to setting the intention for my health and wellness, I'm going to call it planner, my health and wellness planner. I had some reflection questions to help guide my thinking and help me set up some realistic expectations before I started this book. And the reason why I took this approach is because I have tried to track different habits and set routines for the past few years in other books, and I have struggled to stay consistent. So I would say I pretty much gave up any kind of tracking altogether in 2023 because I couldn't figure out a way to be consistent with it. And that was leading me to being unmotivated, and it was leading me to feeling defeated, and I just kind of gave up altogether. And so I really wanted to reflect on what didn't work in the past so that I could set myself up for success in 2024, and also really get clear on the purpose of doing this and the intended outcomes. Some of the questions that I asked myself were, what is the purpose? For this, the purpose is to have a place where I can have all of my health and wellness information so that I can refer to it for myself or also for my doctor or my therapist or any other professional in my life that might be interested in this information. I really wanted to have a reference. Another question was, what do I want this to look like at the end of the year? I want it to have an overview of my overall mental and physical health in the areas that are important for me to have a better understanding of. I want to be able to identify trends and different themes going on in my life. I'm someone who has struggled with burnout at multiple times in my life, and I would like to be able to be a little more proactive about being able to identify when I might be heading towards the direction of burnout again, and also have a place that will allow me to take small steps towards overcoming it if I do find myself back in that space. I want a place that will enable me to self-reflect and improve my overall self-awareness in terms of what I'm doing to take care of myself and what I could be doing better, and also celebrate what's going well. What hasn't worked well in the past, and why did I fall off? In the past, I tried to set up trackers and I didn't keep up with them, and I think part of that had to do with the fact that the time it took to set up those trackers was time that I eventually felt too overwhelmed to do. And so at the beginning of every month, I would dedicate this entire page to like a monthly tracker. And then as I was trying to plan out my day, I would try to flip to my monthly tracker and fill it out. And over time, if I stopped filling it out, I would feel discouraged, and then I would just fall off and not do it at all. And so what that tells me is I need to be able to track these things without having to spend a lot of time with setup. As much as I really loved the idea of setting up these beautiful spreads, I'm less likely to actually fill them out if I have this additional step of having to do the setup. And so what that tells me for 2024 is whatever I'm tracking, I need to be able to like open up this book and just track. I don't want to have to open up the book and spend 15 to 30 minutes doing an elaborate setup, because that is probably going to be enough to deter me from actually using the book. So I need it to be super simple. What are some potential blockers and what are some ways to overcome? In my reflection, I realized that I need to make sure that whatever I'm tracking is something that is just the right amount of information that I'm willing to track. And an example of that is, in the past, I have tracked strength training sessions. And what I would do is I would write down all the different exercises that I did with the weights that I used and how many reps. And while that is interesting information, that got overwhelming and I didn't enjoy tracking that. So that is something that I have an app for, that I just allow the app to track. And what I want to do in this book is really yes or no, did I do it? So I think just simplifying the things that I'm tracking and making sure that I really get clear on the purpose of whether I'm going to track it or not is something that I want to bring into 2024. The main things that I need to keep in mind are that I want to minimize the amount of setup that I need to do in order to do the tracking in the first place. And I also want to minimize the amount of detail that I'm tracking. So if anything, I could look at this as a bit of like a TLDR kind of health and wellness. And if I want more detail, then I can reference other things that are going to be tracking that level of detail for me. Another thing that I have realized is that I am not always a daily tracker, if that makes sense. So even though I think it is important to track certain habits on a daily basis for the sake of seeing and being able to identify trends, I know myself and I'm not necessarily going to be able to keep up with that on a daily basis. What I do like to do is, what I am okay with doing is backtracking. And so what are some ways that I can set myself up for success when I know that I may not track certain things every day, but I want to have an ability to retroactively add it in so that I can still have that overview. As an example, in 2023, I committed to doing a temperature blanket, which is a blanket where I crochet one square for every day of the year that represents the temperature for that day. And I love the idea of having a year-long project where I could look back at the end of the year and be able to see this project that I had been working on for an entire year. But I also knew that the chances of me actually crocheting a square every single day for an entire year was unrealistic and would set me up for failure. So what I did was I made sure that there was a way that I could access all of the temperature data so that I could retroactively catch up. And Mike helped me out and found a website that has historical weather data for the year and helped create a spreadsheet for me that automatically populates the data. And so even if a week has gone by and I haven't worked on my temperature blanket, I know that I have already created a way for me to access that information so that I can update in batches. I think I'm going to take that principle of creating a strategy to enable me to batch update. So at the end of the year, I will still have a daily view of some of the habits that I want to have daily information for, even if I'm not opening up this book every day and updating it. That might not work for everybody. That's just a way of me recognizing something that I'm probably going to struggle with and creating an alternative path for me so that I can set myself up for success. The other questions that I had in my reflection were, what do I want to track? How often do I need to track these things? So what is the cadence that I want to track these things? How often will I want to reflect and identify trends and themes? And how much time do I have to update? Or how much time am I willing to allocate towards updating this book? So in terms of time, I really want this to be a relatively quick thing, because if I set up elaborate ways that I need to track things and I add too much in here, I'm going to give up. So I'm going to say that I want to dedicate 10 to 15 minutes a day to updating this on a daily basis. And I know I just mentioned that I may not be doing this every day. And I just talked about contingency plans, but I would like to set this up in such a way that I'm not having to overthink what I do in here. So I'm not going to spend 15 to 20 minutes decorating my spreads. There's nothing wrong with that. And I probably will pop in a sticker or some washi tape here and there because I have a lot of it and I think it's fun, but that's not going to be my priority. My priority is really going to be getting clear on what I want to track, opening it up, tracking it, closing it. So that is, I'm going to say 10 to 15 minutes, and I will do an update probably at the end of Q1 just to see how that's going and how much time I've actually spent. In terms of the other questions, this is where I'm going to bring in my little activity. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to write down everything that I want to track on a sticky note. It doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily track everything, but for now, I'm just going to write down everything that I would like to track, and then we'll go from there. So I'll do a couple with you and then I'll kind of skip to when I'm finished. Let's say I want to track my daily steps. And I have to say, these are not my favorite sticky tabs, but because I already have them, I want to use them. Okay, I've got a few stickies here. I've got steps, weight training, skin breakouts. I have eczema, and occasionally I get really bad flare-ups. I'm just going to keep doing this. So I'm finished writing down all the different things that I would like to track. The idea was to just get it all out on little sticky notes. And the reason why I wanted to have just one thing for each is because now I can categorize. The exercise of just getting it all out without overthinking it is a really nice way to get started when planning out something that feels kind of overwhelming, at least for me. Okay, so now that I have all of my different things that I want to track here, I'm going to start categorizing them based on how often I expect to be tracking them. And that will help me determine where I want to put it in my health and wellness tracker. I'm just going to start off with like frequency. I think the categories I'm going to do are something like more than once a week. Okay, so those are my categories. So we've got more than once a week, every few weeks to a month, a few times a year, and we've got ad hoc. So the idea here is that if it's something that I think I want to be tracking more than once a week, that's going to go in the weeklies. If it's something that's every few weeks to a month, it's probably going to go in my monthly. If it's something that really just happens every few times a year, that'll be in the like yearly. I've got ad hoc for a few things that will just come up whenever they come up. And then actually a final thing is going to be, I'm just going to call this logs, because there's a few things that fit in this and I'm not really sure where else I would put it. Since I already know that I have this structure of annual, monthly, yearly, and I want to be able to figure out where I'm going to track what, I've just started with these categories, and I'm going to take these tasks and I'm going to move them into these different categories. So I'll start with the really easy things first. I have a bunch of collections that I've been tracking in my monthly TN for 2023, and I'm not going to be getting a monthly TN for next year. So things like TV shows watched, that is going under the log section. TV shows watched, books read, movies watched, friend log, NaNoWriMo, which was something that I wanted to do this year and completely fell off. It was this challenge where I think you write a letter or a postcard to someone for every day in February. I had all these grand plans and I wrote down names of all the friends I was going to write letters to. I think I maybe got 3 or 4 written, and then I got overwhelmed and it never happened. So I'd like to try that again in February. Massage, that's going to go under ad hoc. Actually, I'm going to put this under a few times a year because this is something that I would like to proactively integrate into my life. Mood is something I would like to track more than once a week. Sleep, I've got water. Social relationships, I think I'm going to put that under month. Creative time, I want that to be more than once a month. Money spent on hobbies, I think I want to be tracking that on a monthly basis because I think every week is going to feel a little bit overwhelming. Alcohol, meditation, date log. Physio is going to go under ad hoc. So I don't always need physio, but if I do, this is the place that I would track what happens at my sessions and also what advice or exercises I'm given, and then potentially how often I'm doing them because I struggle with doing my physio exercises. I'm curious about my steps every day, but I'm probably going to be updating this in batches. So I'm going to say once a week. Dessert is going to be once a week. therapy, I'm going to put that under month. Temperature, that's going to be once a month. Skin breakouts, that's going to be ad hoc, so whenever it happens. Weight training, gratitude, skincare, feelings, and weight. So now we have our different categories, and you can see here there's quite a lot that I want to do more like on a weekly basis. I've got a few different things that I want to be doing in a month, and I've got some logs. So I think in terms of how I'm going to start setting this up, I'm going to put all of these logs into the back. So under here, I'm just going to put all these stickies, and I might move this around later, but essentially this is going to be something dedicated for TV shows watched. I doubt I'm going to need both pages, but I might keep it that way for now just so that I have the space. Movies watched and date log. So I've seen a few people talk about these things, and I love the idea of noting down when you go out on dates and also when I'm catching up with friends. So the idea here is that I'll just have more room to log things, and I'll be able to look back at the end of the year and be able to see everything that I've like read or watched. This page, there isn't, as I mentioned, there isn't really a lot of room to work with. And so what I think I'm going to do, I've seen a few other people do this and I like the idea, is I'm going to use this to track my steps. When it comes to my month, so I guess I could start in December. This is where I'm going to be looking at all of these things that are currently on my every few weeks to a month. So these are things that I'm not necessarily wanting to be thinking about on a daily or a weekly basis. So if I catch up and see a friend for a walk, I'm probably going to write it down here, because part of my self-care is ensuring that I make time to see my friends and my family. Money spent on hobbies. It is easy for me to spend a lot of money on my hobbies, and I think it is really important to be aware of that and keep things in check so that I'm not going overboard. Therapy sessions. Don't think I'm really going to be tracking too many notes on my therapy sessions in here. I'm probably going to do that in a separate notebook because it does take up a lot of processing. So the goal here will really just be that I pay attention to how often I'm actually going, and if I'm noticing that in my tracking my mood has been dipping, or if I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel really burnt out or that I'm struggling, it'll be important information for me to know when the last time I went to therapy was. So that's what I'll be tracking here. I'm undecided about whether I'm really going to be tracking my weight, but I think it could be an important data point just to keep an eye on over the year. So I think for now, I'm going to put this under month. Massage. These are sort of ad hoc. I hope I don't have too many skin breakouts, obviously, but they do happen. Occasionally, I may have to see the physio. That's going to be the purpose of the monthly. So there's quite a lot that I am anticipating that I could be tracking in my monthlies, but all of these things I'm not expecting to be doing on a daily basis. Therefore, I think they'll stand out more. So if I say I wanted to track my steps and I wanted to put them in every date, I think they wouldn't stand out as much because it would just be on every single day. So for example, for social relationships, I try to go home and see my parents at least once a week. So it'll be a lot easier to be able to see here how often I'm seeing them, as opposed to if I wanted to track, say, my workouts every day or something, then it would just get cluttered. Intentionally, I'm trying to ensure that whatever I put in here are things that aren't going to be cluttering up my monthly. And then for the weekly, I'm going to start with the things that I'm sure I want to do, and then maybe we will leave some of these things that are going to get overwhelming. Coming back to one of my potential blockers is if I really tried to track all of these things, that's a lot of things to be thinking about on a daily basis. So I can already see that there is a chance that this might be too much. And therefore, I think I need to start prioritizing what is really important for me, or what will be easy for me to do. So something that I think will be easy for me to do is to track the temperature, because I already know that there are websites with historical data. So even if I don't track it on a daily basis, it's something that I can easily go back and enter in. And I think tracking the temperature is really interesting because I do think that my mood is pretty tied to temperature. So if we have a string of really dark and gloomy days, I do notice a difference in my mood. So I am going to prioritize tracking temperature and mood. This will help me with my awareness. Another thing that I think will be relatively easy to track, I didn't make a sticky note for, is run and weight training. It's something that I think is kind of a non-negotiable for me at this stage of my life. I need to be keeping active, and I really want to make sure that I am taking care of myself and my physical health. And so instead of overdoing it and trying to write down like the exact weight training routine that I got myself into, I think I can really just whittle it down to yes or no. So did I do it or not? Just tracking that. And then if I want more detail, I can access it in my app. And running is something that I love to do. I run with my dog and I run with my husband. And so it's easy for me to track, and I don't anticipate that being an issue for tracking. Sleep is another thing that I haven't always been very good at tracking. So I do anticipate this being something that will be hard for me to track on a regular basis. But sleep hygiene in general is so important for my mental health that I think this is one of those stretch goals where I want to make it a habit to sleep better. It's just going to set me up for success, and I need to prioritize it. So even though I anticipate this is going to be hard to track, I'm going to try again. I have failed many times to track my sleep. I'm going to try again, and maybe I'll use my phone as a backup, because I think my phone does give me a bit of a range, an estimation of how many hours I'm sleeping based on when I put it down for the night and when I pick it up. So some of the other things that I have struggled to track in the past, for example, is water. I know I have tried to say like, oh, I'm going to drink so many waters in a day, and then, track my progress throughout the day. I've never been very good at it, and I do think it's important, but I don't think it is more important for now anyway than sleep. So I think this is one that I will put on the side for now, and maybe I'll experiment with it, but I'll leave it out for now. Skincare is another thing that I think I'm going to leave out. I do have eczema and I do struggle with my skin, but I've also got the most basic skincare routine. I don't wear makeup because it irritates my skin. And so I've already created a habit of washing my face when I wake up and washing my face when I go to bed, and using a day cream and a night cream. And that's pretty much all I do. So I am going to not commit to tracking that. I also put feelings down, and I think because I have like a Dear Diary journal, I don't need to be tracking my feelings in here. If anything, that might be difficult to accomplish, writing down my feelings, if I'm only allocating 10 to 15 minutes a day. So as much as I love the idea of tracking temperature, mood, and then writing down how I'm feeling, I think I'm going to leave this out for now, because I think I'm going to be getting this information in other ways in my system, and I don't really want to allocate a whole space in my weekly for. So maybe what I'll do instead is, if I feel like talking about my feelings because there's a theme that I'm sensing, I can process it on this notes page, but I'm not going to try to push myself to track this on a daily basis. I think this will be more of like an ad hoc thing. Same with gratitude. I love the idea of practicing gratitude. I feel like I already kind of practice it in different ways. I've got my A6 that I'm going to be using for like a personal, fun, creative book, and I think going to make more sense in there. And I also have a 5-year, so I have plenty of different spaces for tracking gratitude. I don't think that is something that I really need to do right now, but if I change my mind, I can always do that in this notes section. Integrating creative time into my day is part of my self-care plan, and I'm actually not sure how consistent I am. I feel like I kind of go through spurts where I'll hyper focus on something creative for a few days, and then I'll spend another few days not doing anything creative. So I think I will attempt to track this, and this will be something that I'll come back to at the end of Q1 and see if I'm keeping up with it. I think all of these are going to go in the ad hoc as a, if I feel like it, I'll add these in. Or maybe if some of these things I want to change out throughout the year, I can refer back to these. Meditation is one of those habits that I have been trying to integrate into my life for years. And maybe I should be kinder to myself and accept that I'm not really doing it. I don't know. I think I need to do some self-reflection on why I haven't put in the effort to make this a habit, because there's so much evidence that shows that this is so good for your mental health, but I just don't prioritize it. So I kind of want to track it because I feel like with sleep, it is actually really important. And because it's on my self-care plan, I think I will put it here, knowing that I might not track it. We are coming to the end of this video as an overview of where we're at. We're leaving this blank for important dates. Possibly I might track my period here because I could see this being useful if I was at the doctor's office and they wanted to know. For now, I'm going to leave this blank until I'm sure. Here, I think I'm going to use this for tracking my steps. I just think it'll be fun to track, and it's something that I can fill out on my own time if I fall off. So I'm not necessarily going to be filling this out on a daily basis, but by the end of the year, I will have an overview of the steps that I've taken this year. And I think that will be a very interesting thing to track for 2024. In my monthlies, I do have a lot of things, but all of these things are relatively infrequent. So I think they fit really well in the month. So I'll be noting down things like when I use a new toothbrush, who I've been spending time with, how much money I'm spending on my hobbies, how often I'm going to therapy, when I'm changing my razor, my weight, massages when they happen, physio appointments if they happen, and also if I do go to physio, I'll be taking notes in my notes pages, whether I have any skin breakouts and how long they last for, and my period. So that's what I'll be looking at on a monthly basis. And then we head into our weeks, and here is where I am going to attempt to track the temperature of the day, my mood for the day, whether I do running or weight training, what my sleep hours are, whether I'm getting creative time or not, and meditation. I think all of these, the run, weight training, sleep, creative time, meditation, I think these are going to be like a yes or no kind of thing. So I'm not going to be aiming for detail. It's just going to be like, did you do it or not? Except for running. For running, I usually track how far I've run and what type of run it is. So that's what I'll be doing on a weekly basis. I intentionally want to keep my notes pages blank because this is where I'll allow myself to take notes, like if I'm at the physio and I need to write down notes from my appointment. If I'm at therapy, perhaps the same thing. And if it does stay blank, maybe I'll decorate it. And then we head into the back of the book where this is more of like collections of things that I want to track over the year. Again, I don't want it to be too complicated. So here I'm just going to write down the date and TV shows that I've watched. Same thing, date and the movies. Maybe I'll eventually add like a rating system. But again, I really want to keep this simple. So I'm not going to do any like fancy reviews or anything like that. It's really just a log. books that I've read, NaNoWriMo, date log, friend social log. And I also mentioned at the beginning of the video that I wanted to think about like monthly reflections. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these notes pages to do monthly recaps. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, so I will update you in a future video once I've had more time to figure that out. But I'll probably have some questions that will guide my reflection, and I'll probably do that in the back here in the notes. So at the end of the year, I can then look back and be able to get some insights about how things are going for the year. Yeah, I think I'm gonna end the video here. I really wanted the intention for this video to be thinking through what I want to use this for and where I'll be tracking them. And I'll do a follow-up video to show you what this looks like, depending on how comfortable I am sharing what it looks like on the inside. It's not going to be fancy. It's probably going to be very messy and not very pretty to look at. So I don't know if that'll be interesting for you to see, but if you would be interested in seeing how this looks after I've started filling it out, let me know, and maybe I can do a flip through in the future. That's all that I have for you today. So if you're still here, thank you so much for still being here. I know it was kind of a long video. Hopefully you got some good ideas. And if you have any suggestions or recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and I will respond as soon as possible. I'm so curious to hear how you've set up your health and wellness planner, if you have decided to keep one for 2024, or just in general. I'd love to hear how you track your health and wellness, if that is something that you have decided to do for 2024. Thanks again for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.